right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this Friday, likely one of the last summer feeling weekends we might have this year. I know folks are anxious to get out and enjoy it, and we're grateful that you're taking time out of your Friday to be here with us today to talk about access to advanced coursework, which we know is very important for young people in our state, and something that our schools and districts struggle with, particularly in a time where we have shortages of teachers, particularly in rural areas, and state level accountability, and to some extent standards may or may not incentivize schools and districts to offer access to advanced coursework. We know young people want access to learning at higher levels, particularly in subject matter that is meaningful, relevant, and of interest to them. And far too often, they don't have those opportunities at their local school district level. And we need to be better stewards of ensuring that they do have these opportunities. And so for our conversation today, our lunch and learn today, we're going to have a facilitated conversation between Dr. Julia Roberts of the Gatton Academy and Kentucky Gifted and Talented here in the state, and Sneha Shah Coltrane, who is with North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. As part of our work, we have worked closely with both the Education Trust at the national level, with Dr. Roberts, folks on the ground like Wynn Radford, who's joining us from Christian County today, and we have followed the work of North Carolina, both directly and through some of our national partners. Then we'll have a conversation about the passage of House Bill 190. And with us on our team here at the Pritchard Committee is Delaney Stevens to help us better understand what House Bill 90 is and what it means for education in Kentucky, what it can mean for the future as we pivot to what needs to happen after the passage of House Bill 190 to make it even stronger. So we're going to pack all that into about 50 minutes with a goal of wrapping up our conversation about 10 minutes before the hour. So you have that all important commute time that is still important in a virtual environment. So with that, Dr. Julia Roberts, I'm going to turn the podium over to you.
Thank you, Bridget. Please know advanced coursework, advanced learning opportunities have been needed as long as we have taught children. It is nothing new. We need opportunities for students who are ready to learn at advanced levels. The excellence gaps, the gap between subgroups of students performing at the highest level, have highlighted the fact that we need more high-level opportunities, more advanced coursework. In April of 2023, the Center for Gifted Studies at WKU offered a symposium on the importance of advanced content, bringing together various decision makers around the state. It wasn't the beginning of the conversation on advanced coursework, but it sparked interest in moving forward. So knowing about the legislation in other states brings us to North Carolina because they were the early birds in starting legislation on advanced coursework. So it's very important for us to learn by those who have had experiences with initiating and implementing advanced coursework. And there's no better person to be talking with than Sneha Shah Coltrane, who is Director of Gifted Education and Advanced Learning Opportunities in North Carolina. Welcome, Sneha.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Roberts. I would say there are lots of other folks who have lots of amazing experience, especially you, Dr. Roberts, in this area, but I'm very grateful that North Carolina really has been leading in this effort for the last several years on in multiple fronts. So I'm excited to speak with all of you today about that.
So tell us how it all began. What was the legislation? When was it? And what kind of a start
Sure.
did it
So there's I think today we're really here to talk about the auto enrollment
Yes.
idea. We also do have another legislation that I do want to also talk about that also helped to synergize with this legislation if we have time a little bit later. But this particular legislation came about 5 to 7 years ago. And I say that because it happened right before COVID. And so, so technically it was on the books, but I would really say it's been most effective the last several years post-COVID. And this idea was let's use data that already exists. Let's use data that children are already showing us that they are able to achieve at high levels, and let's go ahead and enroll them. Let's not wait for a teacher recommendation. Let's not wait for a student to advocate. Let's not wait for a parent to advocate. Yes, all those are great ways, and we want to keep encouraging that for other students. But students that have already shown us their high achieving ability, and in North Carolina, that's from our state assessments. If they already have a 5, which is our highest level, we're going to automatically place you in the next advanced math course. Or if there is not a course available, for example, in elementary school, in whatever is already available for identified gifted education students. Because what we saw in North Carolina was we do have an excellence gap. And we had students, one, that even if they were identified, sometimes didn't choose, not feeling like maybe the environment was the best for them, maybe a teacher didn't recommend them, etc. So lots of unintended barriers. But then also students who are gifted education process and procedures of identification missed, right? And I'm coming from a public education background, 30th year as a professional now. What we need to do in public education is meet the needs of our kids. If we can recognize them and identify them early, that's great. But we also know there are students who need it that we may be able to see it in a different way and may not go through that official process. And that's what this is for. If you can show it, let's do it. Let's put you in there. And it's been incredible. It really has. As of last year, we have 95%, well, greater than 95%. I can't technically tell you, but greater than 95% of our students who now scored a level 5 are now placed in an advanced math course from grades 3 up. And before this legislation, it was closer to the 80s. And we're not exactly sure, but that's our initial data showed that. So what we want is to say, let's go ahead and place these kids. Let's give them these opportunities. And then also let's not limit. Let's continue to look for other children. And so what we were finding is classrooms were limiting kids to certain students, and that's not what we wanted. We wanted to open those classrooms and really broaden access.
Absolutely. So you started with mathematics, is that right?
Yes, we sure did. And mathematics, as we know, there are certain courses that really are gateway courses in math, right? And in our state, Math 1. Some other states, it's algebra. We have an integrated mathematics approach. And so in the legislation, it actually specifically says Math 1 shall be, these students shall be placed. Now, a parent can request in writing to not have that student go forward. And we're still working through that, right? Working through mindsets, working through culture and community. Um, but I will say we are moving in the right direction for sure. We do have legislation proposed now for English. We've not seen a lot of movement. We did see one of the chambers did approve that. When I say we haven't seen a lot of movement, we just in general have not seen a lot of movement from our legislature this session. But we hope we can do ELA. But even outside of the legislation, we already have districts doing that themselves through their gifted plan. They have said we can do this. We don't have to wait for legislation. This is easy access. We already have this data. Let's open the doors and let our students experience this high level math.
Did you have pushback from districts not wanting to do the auto enrollment?
I think yes. Where we have pushback is similar to what Bridget mentioned earlier, where there's not enough teachers. So how do we do this? We had pushback from some districts regarding mindsets, right? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean, this kid? This kid's never been in these courses. We're just going to put them in. And I'm like, yeah, but that kid, even without gifted services, look, scored at a level 5, the highest possible. And so a lot of it was mindset shift. One district I remember distinctly up in our rural mountains called me up and said, Sneha, we had 8 kids that we had no idea, and that were not in our advanced programming. Guess what? And then she went on to tell me, and she said 6 of the 8 were all English language learners. And she said, clearly, we were not seeing their potential. And so what they did the next year was they made sure there was scaffolding. They made sure the EL teacher, right, was there in that math class. We had 6 and another 2 students who in that one school who showed us they could do this, were not yet identified, but yet could benefit from this experience. So I think mindsets have been a big shift. I do think practices have been a barrier, whether it's not having enough teachers, teacher training, and thinking out of the box, right? How do I partner with maybe the high school, right? And especially now with the virtual world, like, can we now have a student virtually tap into a high school if it's too far away? Can there be a student we bring over from the high school? Can there be a cohort of kids that we can now do this? And so it's taken a while, but the good news is that it doesn't cost any more money because you're not at, so the children who are now in the advanced course, we're not saying they're taking a second math course, they're just getting placed in the right course. So that's the good news, is that fiscally it's balanced, right? It's not costing us anything. It is costing creativity, right? And it's causing us to shift and be adaptable with scheduling. Um, and so those have been, I think, the mindset and then the practices have been the biggest shift. We know in education, one of the most research proven strategy is acceleration. But yet, our communities and our educators have the hardest time with allowing students to advance for whatever reason, control, a bad experience. We like children, in certain grade levels, et cetera. And so it's taking time. Luckily, in our state, we have lots of other initiatives that kind of all work together and synergize to help this bloom and to help this really come to fruition so quickly. But there are those challenges for sure.
So, and I hear you saying this, and I want to say it for any of those who are listening, because we too in Kentucky aren't just looking at gifted kids for advanced courses. We're looking at children who are ready for advanced coursework, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We do not want anything limiting a child. If that child is ready, no matter what their profile is, whether they're identified as gifted, whether they're not identified as gifted, whether they have been, in EL services, like the example it does not, the key is they have shown us what they can do. They've already shown us what they can do. They are scoring at the highest level. And in ours, that is career and college ready. If they're already at that level, actually beyond that, that's a four, beyond career and college ready. If you've already showed us that, then why do we need any other methodology? Let's put them in the right course.
So, one of the things that is really important is you saying that fiscally it does not
Mhm.
require anything more. Um, did you find that professional learning opportunities were important for
Yeah.
what would be offered in an advanced course?
Absolutely. Especially if you're using teachers who have not taught advanced courses before. So let's say you have a middle school teacher who has never taught your first high school math class before. We definitely need professional learning there. We need professional learning around this idea of acceleration, right? And this idea of advanced learning. We also need professional learning around how to be creative with scheduling, right? So, we've talked to academic leaders and districts and coached them and said, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? So there is no doubt. Um, but I, but once people have gotten used to it, they say, well, why did we never do this before? Like we have some districts who are starting to do it for English. They're like, why did we never do this before? We have the data. We have the data. In high school, we tend to differentiate a lot more easily because we offer so many different types of courses in high schools, right? Whether it's interest-based or academic or however the courses are, you have different levels of courses. Middle school in particular is where we don't necessarily do that as much. And what a lot of our districts have said is that it's opened their eyes that why would we not just go ahead and do this? We have the data. We know these students are going to learn more in a different environment. The other piece that I think that has been really helpful, Dr. Roberts, that I want to go ahead and share in the professional learning is talking about how one of the biggest concerns is we're skipping grades, we're skipping content. And what I like to say is we should never use the word skip because we don't want children to skip content. What we want them to do is to accelerate and go at a faster pace. So we have at the State Department, created documents that can help if a district has not been able to compact the standards intentionally, right? And said, okay, we know there are groups of students who are gonna be in advanced math later. We want to make sure in sixth and seventh we compact correctly. But let's say there's a student who doesn't show us their ability until a little bit later, right? That we don't capture that child, let's say till seventh grade. So now they really only have gone through sixth and seventh, but they need to be put into math one, algebra one or math one. Well, technically, then they're missing grade eight. And so what we want to do, what we did was we showed what standards and how they can be integrated. So we're not missing that content. And I think that's really important is to validate that is a real concern. And so how can we work with districts and how can districts and schools think through, okay, if you do have a student that all of a sudden is going to go from seventh to ninth grade, for example, math, and is going to skip because they have not been in that compacted course, how can we make sure that they're receiving that intervention and that scaffolding so they're not missing content?
So you've provided
Some
um,
guidance. Mhm.
guidance to doing that.
Yes.
So if you're looking at your state assessment
Mhm.
results to opt in, when do you get your state assessment results back?
So we get them initially, schools get them back within a week of taking the test. And then all of the accountability data is later in the fall, right? Where schools are graded and all the accountability. But individual students within a week or so, so the teachers and the district can have those results before the start of the school year. So they can then appropriately place students.
That's really important information for us, is that isn't the the schedule in which we get results back. It's much later than that. So that's useful, certainly in terms of place.
Absolutely. Now, I will say though, let's say a district doesn't get the results till the summer. I mean, I still think, I mean, we make schedule changes all the time in the fall. We do it when kids are back in school. So I think there's a way if there's a will, no matter when now, if the test course don't get back till October, of course, that's a whole different ball game. But I would assume your test scores come back before the start of the next school year. I hope so.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, well,
So
that may be something we need to.
to figure out.
Yes.
So tell us, what has been the greatest benefit
Mhm.
of automatic enrollment in math?
One, I think parents and students understand that, okay, if I get this, I'm going to be in this class. And it's not this myth. It's kind of like college admission, right? I know we just unveiled a direct admissions program. When things are clear, it's when they aren't clear. Well, I'm not sure what my kid's going to end up taking. Well, they're on that gifted track. I don't know. Or at third grade, well, maybe now they're going to be in math one. And, it's made it clear. I think it's helped districts to say, okay, all these kids for sure are going to be in here. And now let's look at other students that may benefit from this because we also don't want to limit, right? Because there could be students who didn't score for whatever reason that day, or still need that advanced course enrollment. So, I think making it clear um, that there is this fast track, right, into this course, but that, hey, we also want to open it up and see, are there other students who would benefit from this experience?
And I am assuming you've seen great growth in achievement by doing this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it depends on exactly what you mean by growth and achievement. I do feel like some people would say, well, if you open the course up to so many kids, did the scores drop? No, our scores did not drop because these kids clearly were qualified and were able to do it. So our scores did not drop. We have more students than ever before in Math 1 and eighth grade. We have more students across all of our subgroups, high placement across all of our subgroups, which is really exciting as well.
Absolutely.
Because at first, I think we did have lower subgroup placement, but now they all are high. So, I think it's part of the culture now of the school, right? And communities feel welcome. It's not rare anymore to see somebody like yourself or, like a student and themselves in a classroom. So that's really exciting.
So you mentioned early on there was another initiative
Mhm.
that you would share with us.
Yeah, the other thing that I think has also helped is that we also have another piece of legislation to broaden access and increase successful participation in AP courses. And IB and Cambridge courses. So this fit with that mission of our legislature. We're also very fortunate in North Carolina to have very strong gifted education legislation, and all of this kind of lives together. But what's nice is high schools already knew we were focusing on this idea of broadening access. We've had double-digit growth, surpassing the nation for several years now for all of our subgroups except natives. And then this year, I think we may have caught up with our native indigenous population, but our Blacks and Hispanics exam participation shot up off the roof over the last 10 years, and so has success. Double digits. And so what's wonderful is that when you have multiple initiatives like this working together, based on a strong foundation in North Carolina for gifted education that we do have. We've had gifted education legislation for over 60 years, and we have um, more funding than most states. We'll never say enough funding, but more funding than most states. And so it fits really nicely together in the puzzle of advanced learning, right? We have dual enrollment. So a big state, over 36% of my graduating seniors last year, our graduating seniors last year participate in dual enrollment. So we have all of these areas all at the department with me. And so what's nice that it all kind of works together and we can look at a K-12 spectrum of how are we really cultivating talent in our students and responding to that academic talent across a K-12 spectrum. And that's what's really exciting is how are we developing talent and then responding to it. And so with that other AP legislation, it's been really beautiful in that so people see how it all ties in together, right? And that's what we want people to see. It's not just about a piece of legislation. The policies, I'm a policy geek, love policies. Um, sometimes mindsets lead the way, sometimes teacher practices lead the way, and sometimes policies lead the way. And I feel like when all three of those come together is when you really get wonderful synergy that really can move a state forward. And that's where I feel like that we are now in North Carolina.
I'm kind of a policy geek too, and
I know you are,
there, there
Dr.
aren't too many of us.
No.
My last question is going to be, how important is it that you're starting with third graders, with elementary children?
Oh, so incredibly important. The sooner the better, right? The sooner we can recognize potential in children and respond to them, the sooner we can make sure that we're not losing precious time in their child development, right? In their academic development. So that's why we actually revised the legislation the initial legislation was just high school and middle school, and then we were able to expand it to third grade. And again, you see it, they get now. People are like, well, we don't have courses. I said, no, I get that you don't have a fourth grade specific math course, but we do have advanced learning opportunities in our state, right? What our gifted ed students receive. And so we said, if you don't have an advanced course in elementary, then whatever your top kids are getting, these kids should be included, right? We're not waiting on a teacher recommendation or a parent recommendation or formal identification as gifted. We're going to include these kids because they showed it to us. And so they showed us their potential, they showed us their achievement, and then we need to move it forward.
And I feel so strongly that if we don't start in
I know.
elementary school, we're not getting our children ready to do advanced work in
Nope.
middle and high school.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
We all know it does not happen overnight. It takes, years to really fill those gaps of learning, right? And how are we filling that time gap? And so the sooner we can get students where they need to be, the less gap is being created in their development. And I'm a mindset at kindergarten. A kid comes in, they shouldn't be sitting. Dr. Robertson and I do this a lot, and you've taught me so well over the years. They shouldn't be in letter of the day if they know how to read. Like,
No.
why are we putting them in letter of the day? Just because it's the day they gave birth, you know? The day that they were conceived and gave birth is really our tracking mechanism in American public schools. And instead, we need to be looking at a child's ability and their development.
And no doubt we go to school to learn. And we've got to
New
make
things.
sure the opportunities are there that those students who are ready to learn at a higher level, at a different, on a different time schedule, have that opportunity to learn. Well, Sneha, thank you so much for sharing with us. I love seeing you, talking
So
with
good to see
you,
you too.
and I'm sure I'll have many questions as we move forward. So,
Anytime.
Bridget, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Sneha, thank you so much for bringing us that information from North Carolina. It gives us hope. One of the questions in the chat from Jackie Pope Terrence, do you know of any other states where automatic enrollment is taking place? And
Oh,
if
yeah.
so, at what levels?
We sure do. We know Texas is doing it. I just spoke to DC schools. They're looking into it. I've spoken to a couple other states. Where we have there's about six or seven, if I right, Dr. Roberts, you may know better. I don't have the list in front of me.
I think there's seven, with Virginia being the most
Most
recent one.
recent, yes.
Yeah.
I spoke to Virginia as well.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful,
And
wonderful.
there's also Bridget, John Hopkins made a brief. Dr. Roberts, have you shared that with Bridget? If not, I can.
Would you please? Maybe you should share it with me too. I don't know
Yes,
if I know about it.
absolutely. I think you've seen it. It was a couple years ago. I'm happy to email it to you. Johns Hopkins, Dr. Plucker there did a brief on this topic.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
we're featured, yeah. We're featured and several other states are featured, but you could share that with this
Okay.
audience, Bridget.
Yes, if you would email that to me and we'll get it
Absolutely.
out to
Yeah.
folks and push it out here.
Absolutely.
Dr. Plucker is certainly a friend of Kentucky through Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
and is a friend of the Pritchard Committee as well. Um, so we'll get that out to folks. We are fortunate in Kentucky that we're not on the initial learning end here. We've actually been learning for a number of years, as I mentioned in our intro. In following North Carolina, the Education Trust being an important partner to us in this issue, as well as Dr. Plucker at Johns
Yep.
Hopkins. And then the Collaborative for Student Success at the national level, also being a partner with us in this. On the ground here in Kentucky, Win Radford in Christian County, a Pritchard Committee member, has been championing this narrative locally, along with another Pritchard Committee member, um, Julie Tennyson in McCracken County. So there's been a bit of a, if I may, groundswell building on this issue. And we were proud to finally, or to get an initial bill over the finish line in the last legislative session. And that was House Bill 190, sponsored by Representative Robert Duvall, who is from Dr. Roberts' area of the state. So we have no doubt that there was some maybe not arm twisting, but certainly a little nudging from across the community there in Warren County. But we were thrilled to have Representative Duvall sponsor the legislation. I'm going to ask Delaney to, on our team, who has been leading this work, staffing the effort, and is now staffing a working group on our next steps. So Delaney, share with us, I think, the interest from legislators in Frankfurt that you witnessed last session, and maybe just a little bit of context on the passage of House Bill 190 before we get into the content of it.
Sure. Thank you, Bridget. I'm glad to join you all today. So the House Bill 190 has it built on a lot of momentum over the previous few years, trying to get toward how do we ensure that students have those.
Uh-oh, Delaney, you're freezing.
Can you hear me now, Bridget?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll keep my video off for just a moment.
Okay.
Um, so 190, House Bill 190 was the culmination of several years worth of work by the General Assembly to try to increase the opportunities that students have beginning in early grades so that we can prepare them for what comes next in their educational journey. And the foundations of House Bill 190, there was existing legislation around accelerated learning opportunities for students and what districts need to be doing to provide these opportunities to students, but there was really no formal policy mechanism around accelerated learning, advanced coursework. How do we think about defining advanced coursework? So all of that culminated in House Bill 190 that was passed this past legislative session. So there's a lot of appetite from the legislature to make sure that we're increasing these opportunities for students and supporting districts in doing so. And House Bill 190 helps set the foundation for that.
All right, so Delaney, share with us what are the primary components of House Bill 190?
I'm going to share with you all a slide that just high level provides a little bit of context, but I'll talk through this in a little bit more detail. So by December 1st of this year, every district is required, they shall adopt an advanced coursework plan. And it begins in grade 4 and goes through grade 12 in core subjects. So that includes language arts, reading, math, and science courses, as well as social studies. Another provision, a shall provision, and so one of the requirements at a minimum is that KDE has been directed to establish recommendations for using preliminary assessment data. Sneha, you mentioned earlier about the assessment, when those come back to districts, that was a really critical piece for this legislation, especially around the conversations with automatic enrollment, because um, districts aren't getting that assessment data until the very first, probably the week before school starts. And so, one of the things that had to be addressed in this piece of legislation was how can we support and enhance what districts are getting and when so that they can make those timely decisions. And so KDE has been directed to establish some of those recommendations. How can districts use preliminary assessment data when it comes to provisions within House Bill 190? The one of the other shall provisions, the requirements that districts have to adopt is schools have to notify all students, parents, guardians of several key, very important things. First, the long-term benefits of student participation in advanced coursework. So when you think about the importance of awareness beginning in early grades for parents and for students, that can really lay a solid foundation on what kind of decisions they're making. The second thing is that schools have to notify students, parents, and guardians of the advanced coursework opportunities available at the school. And so that is something that is required in the policies that districts are adopting. So those are some of the foundations to House Bill 190. There's several may provisions. So these are suggested provisions that districts may choose to include, but they are certainly not required to. One being automatic enrollment for distinguished students. So that is a may provision currently. It is not a requirement. And it's not just for middle school and high school math. It is for all core subjects beginning in grade 4, is what the language in the bill states. As well as districts may establish additional eligibility criteria for other students beyond just distinguished, meeting that core benchmark score. There's parent consent requirements that may be included for withdrawal, so an opt-out instead of an opt-in, as well as principals having the authority to withdraw a student, and then enhanced family communication. So House Bill 190 essentially provided a really solid foundation on future investments, a future path forward, to including some additional things heading into 2026 and beyond, that can help us get to where we need to be with increasing access to advanced coursework. And I dropped the link in the chat to the actual bill that was signed by the governor in April.
Delaney, thank you. So recognizing that House Bill 190 started moving us down this path, but there's more to do. And Sneha, you, I think, provided an example of that too, with the interconnection of your advanced coursework legislation and your later AP, IB, maybe even dual enrollment legislation. We need to get to a richer system. And Delaney, you've been facilitating a working group to think about the next steps. What are some of the things coming out of that working group conversation?
Yeah, so this working group is comprised of some key K groups, as we call them, representing school boards, parents, superintendents, and school administrators. And what we wanted to do setting up this working group was to, heading into the next legislative session, understand, looking at some of what came out of the original version of House Bill 190. So originally with House Bill 190, there was that automatic enrollment requirement, and that got dropped and put into that May category. We wanted to get a better sense of what is the appetite for, how we move forward, strengthening provisions, what are the gaps, the implementation barriers that we're hearing from districts. So we really wanted with this working group to start understanding at a deeper level, what are some of those implementation challenges, what's some of the feedback that these groups are hearing from districts directly, as well as identifying policy entry points, moving into 2026 so that we can begin an early advocacy, starting to socialize some of these things earlier instead of having to address concerns on the back end once we get into that legislative session. Another primary focus is how do we support districts in implementing policies? What does a model policy look like? One of the things that we have discussed as a group, as a policy working group, is there may not necessarily be a model policy that should be adopted because of the vast differences across Kentucky when it comes to rural versus urban districts, the capacity that districts have, whether it's around teacher workforce or advising systems. And so, thinking about how do we support districts in that policy implementation, that's a really key piece. What is that? What does that guidance need to look like? Um, and of course, advocating for evidence-based policies that can help strengthen the current provisions of House Bill 190. Are there funding supports that are needed around House Bill 190, the provisions in it? And as well as, making how do we make connections to other investments that we already have in Kentucky? So the legislature has made pretty significant investments in the Read to Succeed, the early literacy, as well as numeracy counts. And those pieces of legislation primarily target kindergarten through third grade, fourth grade as well. And so, what are connections that can be made with those investments to increasing investments in advanced coursework?
Okay, great. Delaney, a big step that we'll be taking next legislative session is in the area of mathematics. Is that right?
That's right. And so one of the things that we are looking at is how do we um, increase those opportunities for mathematics, following the lead from other states like North Carolina, in particular with middle school math. How can that be an on-ramp to other automatic enrollment policies that might come later on? And so we are looking at that as a critical on-ramp toward increasing access and making sure that students have those opportunities.
Delaney, thank you. As Delaney mentioned, he dropped into the chat the actual bill so that you can see the language of the bill. And anything else we have, blog posts, a brief or anything, if our team can get that into the chat as well, you'll have that background. So we'll continue to kind of monitor implementation, try to get the word out. Tyler, thank you for your note in the chat that you and Dr. Roberts are working on trying to better understand how much stakeholders and teachers understand this bill and its power. And we'll seek to be a partner with you in that as well, getting this recording out and getting information out to parents and community leaders about the importance of good implementation of this bill as we push forward. So I promised that we would be able to let everyone go from the lunch and learn by 10 before the hour. We will hang around. This will conclude our conversation, but we will hang around here until the top of the hour if anybody has additional questions that they would like to ask. And then we are always available via email, and we'll continue the conversation, of course, with Sneha in North Carolina following their lead, and the Ed Trust and Dr. Plucker at Johns Hopkins, and are always forever proud to have Dr. Julia Roberts here in Kentucky, leading this work, as she is not only a state and a national leader, but an international thought leader on this topic. So thank you all for joining us this Friday. If you have questions, don't hesitate to come on off mute, raise your hand, whatever you want to do. Penny, I'm going to kick it right to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I have tons, but I'll condense as much as I can. I'm thinking about, I don't know if Sneha is still on here. I'm thinking about third grade.
Yes, ma'am.
Third grade is where a lot of things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Third grade is where kids are identified, yes, but also third grade is where certain groups of kids start to get labeled and tracked.
Agreed.
So when we talk about identifying these children and we talk about who's gifted versus who's not, I would love to know, and this is one of the issues I have with HB 190 is this fourth grade versus third, right? What's your data look like in terms of boys of color,
Mm-hmm.
and not just them being enrolled, but their success rate, right? Because we know that there are situations where they won't necessarily be given these opportunities.
Yeah, the good news is that our placement, our students being placed we have now gone over the hump and they all are above 95%. So that is the first great news is that access, for those students who have already qualified and made it through this auto enrollment is happening. And that families must clearly be seeing the benefits versus it being an opportunity that they may fear due to lots of many valid reasons, right? Lots. So, and we don't, that's absolutely there and valid. And so the good news is that at the beginning, I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm so sorry, Miss Penny, but
what? You don't have that memorized? Okay.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But the good news is last year we were above for all of our subgroups in placement. We have not seen at all a drop in our overall state numbers for achievement. Some may say, oh, you're going to see a drop. We did not see a drop. We have not done research on individual student data looking at success. That is something we have we actually had a grant going into the feds the night before all the USDE grants were stopped, Dr. Hopkins and I. So, but I feel very good about it, just like I do. What I'm also seeing is our numbers for access and success for African Americans, Black Americans in the AP data is remarkable now. like 20-30% increase every year for the last several years. Like not just a couple of points. We're talking double digits, not just access, but success now, right? At first it was access, but so
Yeah.
now over time, what I am seeing is a trajectory of students, families, communities, if you'll let me generalize,
Hmm.
seeing themselves
Sure. Yep.
as part of these students, which is my life goal, right? Is for
Right.
all of our students to be able to see that. And our we've had a call to action for equity and excellence, expanding excellence in our state for several years. I'm happy to send that to you.
Please.
Yeah, happy to send that to you. I can send it to Dr. Roberts or Bridget, and she can get it to you. But that whole notion, all of this is helping us to meet that call. And I'm pleased to see that the initial lags I don't see anymore.
And
Uh,
that AP thing is a huge,
Huge.
it is a massive red flag for me in
Yeah,
Kentucky.
but we're seeing it's
Yeah.
amazing what we're seeing over consistent intervention for almost a decade now. So it doesn't happen overnight, but we
Of
have
course
to
not.
start. But we have to start. And if we don't start, we're never going to see it, right?
And you
But I'm
right, you have
starting
to
to
provide
see
the
it
access.
now
Yeah.
in these numbers, in my dual enrollment numbers.
Mhm.
I mean, some of the most incredible across every subgroup. I
Yeah.
get chills thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, takes commitment,
Hmm.
long-term commitment, because we're building new systems,
Yes.
right? We're building new systems and new cultures of helping students see themselves at high potential.
And that AP, I'm a mom of four who've
Mhm.
gone through. They're all out now, but they were high flyers, right? And they took those AP classes, and every one of them, they were the only one in the room,
Yeah, and that's changing in our
and
state.
that's
And it's
huge.
really
So
exciting. I'm happy to sit with you at any point in
I
time
would
and
love that.
share.
Yes, ma'am. I would
Really,
absolutely love it.
really, Bridget or Dr.
Yeah.
Roberts, if y'all want to connect
Penny
with.
was actually our
Okay, good.
op-ed author way before COVID on this issue.
Happy to.
So
I can
yeah,
tell. I can
yeah,
tell.
Penny, thank you.
Thank you.
We have see a couple questions in the chat, Susan, or I'm sorry, hands raised.
Yeah.
Susan?
Yeah, I wanted to step in right behind Penny's question and ask if you publish data broken out by race and gender both. Because everything
Mhm,
I've seen in Kentucky,
mhm.
what we're doing for Black boys has particularly deep problems, and you can't see it here except by doing special requests to get the information. So I'd love to
So
know what you're doing.
I don't know if my annual report has it by gender. I know our gifted data is by gender. Um, I just haven't looked at it recently. It's been a few months, but
Yeah.
I can look. I mean, it's not, I mean, our reports are based on exactly what the legislators tell us to do. So I just don't know, but I'm happy to,
Yeah,
to look into that
and
for you.
I'll say, just to clarify, I'm looking particularly at every time someone does get the data broken out, we can see that our worst record is delivering on the potential of Black boys.
I think that's a
Getting
national
that
trend.
broken out would
I
be
don't think,
fantastic.
yeah, I don't think that's anything that North Carolina can say. I can say we are addressing it, but by no means I don't think there's any state who has figured out how to mitigate all of the systemic issues around surrounding that
No,
population yet.
and
Yet, I always say yet.
I'd love to get out of denial
Oh,
Yeah.
we're not in
by
denial
getting
in our
seeing the
state.
data as the first piece. Yeah, I have
Yeah,
confidence North Carolina is out of there. Everybody on this call is trying to get Kentucky to
yeah.
confronting it, but
We're
getting
not in denial.
data is a tough lift.
Yeah, good. So Tyler has shared in the chat that gifted data in Kentucky is by gender and race. AP and dual credit are not, though. And he also shares that the College Board does not report publicly by race anymore. So thank you, Tyler, for popping that in there.
But the
Uh,
State Department should, Tyler, check with your SCA. I mean, we publish by race. So, I mean,
So the State Department, the publicly available records is what I'm talking about. They do not report disaggregate it by race or ethnicity or any of the other things about student participation in individual AP subject areas. So we do have it for participating in advanced placement, the program overall, or participating in dual credit overall, but we can't look at the individual subject areas.
Got it.
Something that comes to my mind is computer science with girls. We can't look at which of how many girls are taking computer science AP or dual credit courses and what their performance is. It's just at the course level, we can see how many students have had access to that, publicly at least.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Susan, thank you for that question. Jackie, Pope Terrence.
So I initially thought this may be for Delaney, and I see he's still on, but anyone may be able to kind of help think about this. So I'm thinking about the mindset, and sometimes with the advanced, well, most often with the advanced coursework, that those individuals or those students are thought to be prepping for college, engineering, medicine, law, whatever it may be. And on the other side of that, we're seeing, sort of this concerted effort or push to, which I don't disagree with, but maybe thinking about vocational training or some other kind of trade or whatever that may be. I'm wondering if maybe you're seeing some pushback, or parents may be commenting, or other individuals, sharing, well, why would I want them in advance? Why would we want them in advanced coursework if they're thinking about some kind of trade, or, the state is really hyped on, vocational or trade.
Oh yeah, CTE is very large in our state, but we have math requirements. So we have state math course requirements. Now, some of those at the fourth level can be trade, like we have drafting and some others. But math one, two, and three are all required for every student unless there is an exceptional children need, so an extreme need. We also in North Carolina have really worked to integrate AP and IB courses with CTE pathways.
Okay.
So we have done that for a few years now. So we've really shown, we've embedded a lot of AP courses within those pathways. We do a lot of work with computer science as well. And so we have not seen a negative thing there.
And it sounds like that's just an argument that you've been able to kind of push back. You kind of show that that's not something that needs to be considered in contrast to what the advanced coursework is.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it hasn't been an argument because I just don't think that premise is here, because we do have certain math courses that are required for all students. So, math one is required no matter what, if you're going to do CTE or not. Right.
Thank you for that.
But we have been very intentional about recognizing that trades and career and technical education pathways are beneficial for all students, whether they're going to be early career adopters or career 10 years from now with a PhD, right? And that if you're going to medicine, you may want to do an ENT, you may want to look at a nursing certificate, you may want to do this. So we have really tried to show the benefit of CTE, not just for students who may not be going to 4 years, right? But that in fact, it may be beneficial if you are doing a 4-year university or an 8-year as well. Trying, always a work in progress.
Wonderful. Jackie, thank you for that question. Again, Sneha, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us in Kentucky today. Thank you for the example you're setting and the hope on the horizon, which you have illustrated for us. We look forward to continuing to follow your work in North Carolina and look forward to opportunities to share more of the work that we're accomplishing here in Kentucky as well. I want to thank you all again for joining us. Stay on the lookout for more information on this important topic. It's been one we've been on for a few years now and are committed to staying on top of. So we'll be in touch. Have a wonderful Friday afternoon and a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.